We're back. So we're going to shift back again. We talked about John Brennan last time, and everybody should check that out. Now, currently on the channel, you don't see that, but it will eventually turn back up. We had an interview with Mike Rothmiller, who wrote a book about Marilyn Monroe, and the thesis of the book was that Bobby Kennedy poisoned her.
With Peter Lawford.
Well, yeah, with Peter Lawford,
it was a tag team match.
It was, and it is kind
one
of
had
the
funnel, one had a funnel, the other had a thermos,
and she was a feeding.
or some sort of rectum device, I guess.
Maybe. No, we both felt a little uncomfortable just leaving that out there necessarily to say that we endorse it, and we're going to have opinions that may be introduced to the show or speculations, but that doesn't mean we necessarily endorse them. So we wanted to put this out to look at the Maryland situation. And I thought I'd start with some footage Mark told me about with Eunice Murray talking about that the next day, because there's sketchiness involved with Maryland death.
Yes, the housekeeper who was a psychiatric nurse who may have been an intelligence operative within the household.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and we will check that out.
I couldn't, as a layman, couldn't describe her as depressed. But I know she had many worries, and this particular day she was not lively and enthusiastic. She was very quiet.
With her voice and the way she speaks, I
love to get like the body language guy, the body detectives on her.
she's got an interesting presence about her.
The mood of a person who would later deliberately take her own life.
I doubt that very much. And she had told me that one of the very first things to warn me that if she takes sedation, which she did every night, sometimes she's apt to forget and would take a second dose too soon. And this is what she had to be very careful about. So that was the first thing that I was concerned about after she died, that probably had happened when she went to the telephone.
That plus the missing 50 Nebutols from the body might have been a clue.
Okay.
I mean, the point of the matter is, she combined Nebutol with champagne all the time, and there was a lot of empty bottles there. So I mean, somehow the reality of the situation, I think, this is what my sources and research say to me, is that at some point during that day, Bobby Kennedy showed up and had a conversation with her on behalf of himself and his brother that this thing is over, and asking her not to talk about it anymore. And I believe that sent her into a massive depression, and she killed herself that night. I think that's what happened. But that being said, the psychiatrist who comes over at 12 midnight, Greenson, who hired this woman, that guy. Yeah.
God, he looks like a wannabe Freud. So you got
this guy. Well, he was he was the, I don't want to say this, but he was the Dr. Drew of his day. He had every celebrity in Hollywood as a patient, but he's really a shady looking cat. But
don't have Dr. Drew watch this one.
I hope he doesn't see this one, but I mean that in relation to celebrities. But anyway, so he shows up at midnight, and they don't call the police for 4 hours. And when the police show up, as I indicated in the other show, he said, "Why didn't you call us?" And he said, "Well, we had other people to call." The reality of it is Marilyn's house had so many eavesdropping devices that all these different agency personnel had to show up to clean the house, to clear it. And this was her publicist, who later goes to work in Washington at the State Department, of all jobs, because that's where publicists go when the client dies. They end up in the State Department working for Robert Kennedy. You can't make this up.
So now you were saying though that there was possibly you think a concerted campaign, literally, like, okay, she died, everybody get over there, get your act and your stories together.
I don't even think it's concerted. I think the people eavesdropping, the different agencies, and that includes Rothmiller's intelligence unit, that includes NSA, CIA, they all got to come in and clean the house of all their stuff. And I think that happens all the time in a celebrity death out here. There's different arrangements of photos for the crime scene that goes on. they have a photo of her with the phone in her hand, another photo without the phone in her hand. What did she hang up after she died? I mean, you see,
this is
yeah.
And there's no phone in this at all.
Right, right. So you have various photos, and the reason they do that is so later on you can choose the photo to frame your story for whatever you need as an intelligence unit. That's why that's done. When they go to the sniper's nest in the Texas School Book Depository, Dallas PD is up there for almost 3 hours in that window before anybody's let in. And this is all to arrange the boxes and to build a sniper's nest. And we know that because there's multiple photos of various configurations of the boxes in the sniper's nest at the Texas School Book Depository. This is not some nefarious thing. This is standard operating procedure for many police departments.
Well, dude,
what's
that? You said that right. I've got the Son of Sam people coming on. When Berkowitz was arrested, remember the famous photos of his place all trashed, like, some weird, it was like, the template for the psycho. Well, there are witnesses who were at his house the day before, and he was a neatnik.
Oh,
everything was immaculate.
Okay. Look, so Arthur Bremer shoots George Wallace, and Nixon sends the plumbers unit to Milwaukee to put McGovern campaign flyers all through his living room.
Jesus.
I mean, he's barely in jail, Arthur Bremer, and they're tossing his apartment up in Milwaukee to put Democratic literature in the apartment. So in other words, all these different agencies have different motivations. It doesn't mean they conspired to shoot Wallace.
Sure.
You know what I mean? There's different angles to these things and different axes to grind and different reasons to do what they're doing. And they stage photographs that they could use later on for their own means. The same thing happened with Lenny Bruce's death over here on Laurel Canyon. They propped up his body. They put syringes next to the toilet. They took different photos. You know what I mean? This is all LAPD doing this. And this is for possible later use in an investigation.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not stupid, Eric.
Well, I guess it's opportunistic too. It's like, well, you know what? While we're here, I want to get this message out. And,
while Bobby and Billy are pulling out the phone taps, why don't we go through his refrigerator and see what's in there? You know what I mean? I mean, they'll put stuff in your freezer and refrigerator. They'll put money in there if they wanted to frame you. You know what I mean? There's everybody's got a different thing going on. There may be ongoing investigations of Bobby Kennedy that Hoover wants to do something. You know, I mean, this might have been motivated by J. Edgar Hoover. Everybody's referred to the diary. Maybe that's why Bobby Kennedy showed up, to get the diary, sure. Or to supervise, let's just at a minimum say supervise the pages that mention him and his brother in the diary, and he tears them out. Okay. Is that insane? Your brother's the president of the United States. You're both banging her. And now you want to end this thing. She's claiming she's going to have a press conference on Monday, and you want to head that off at the pass. I don't think anybody killed her. I think she was depressed, and she had overdosed a number of times. I mean,
yeah, you said she was unraveling like the month before she had OD'd or been locked up or something.
Right. Also, she had been down in Mexico City. Arthur Miller, again, this is all people that are related to her who are being followed by intelligence services. Arthur Miller, shown here as a communist. So Arthur Miller and her, she's being followed because of Arthur Miller's political connections to the Communist Party. And then Marilyn Monroe is assigned I want to say honey trap, but it's a male guy, a young screenwriter who is a Spanish Jose Morales or Jose something. I forget the kid's name, young kid. And she's having an affair with him. And he takes her to Mexico City, where they meet all kinds of communist officials and communist dignitaries in Mexico City, including members of the Vanderbilt family, who are funding many of these leftist Marxist operations up north in the States.
Wait, Anderson Cooper? Vanderbilt?
Anderson Cooper's uncle were in Mexico City and met with Marilyn Monroe. Right. You can't make this up. It's just, but anyway, make a long story short, I believe she took her own life, and intelligence services came to clean up their own operations. And it was 4 hours of that. And then they called LAPD. The guy showed up from West LA from the station there and said, why didn't you call us? And she died at 12:30. And that's why you have a doctor doing that. The two doctors came over there, and they called Warner Brothers or Paramount, whichever company she was under contract with. And the PR person gets involved in a bunch of other stuff. But I mean, look at Frances Farmer. She had her head drilled into up at Camarillo, and they did a frontal lobotomy on Frances Farmer. And she was another blonde under contract with the studio system. And they took out her brain, you know.
Well, on that happy note, so verdict is probably killed herself.
Right.
Much ado. Well, I'm not going to say much ado about
Not
nothing,
much ado, but there is ado in other areas other than murder. I mean, there's much ado in other departments.
But the story itself is sadly a little more pedestrian. Very troubled young woman. Sadly,
having sex with the president of the United States and his brother. It's very pedestrian, and you know,
having sex with somebody who's probably not good for her, and then killing herself. I mean, it's just a matter of roles, not necessarily who. But
remember, we have to do the story of Mary Pinchot Meyer, who is JFK's other mistress, the wife of CIA executive Cord Meyer, who's murdered in a park in D.C. We will do this show separately.
Coming soon.
It is a great show. She is a very, very sexy woman.
All right, everybody, remember, subscribe. There's a lot coming up, and you don't want to miss it.